Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Kelly and today we are playing with both distressed oxide and I've already done some work with these little beauties, these distress mica sprays, and I'll tell you and show you the different things I've done with them. Some of them I'll use and some of them I will use in the future. I'll show you the pluses and the minuses of those things, and I will get your opinions to see if you guys have used these objects, if you've had any trouble with them, if I'm just doing it all wrong. So welcome, relax. Today we're getting into moss stories and backgrounds from Maremi's Illustrazioni. And that's MaremiSmallArt by Marta Lipkowska. So working out of this beautiful book today, and only this book. I'm not doing any crossovers today. Sometimes I can do crossovers, but today I'm sticking straight with that book so you can see how you can use the elements in the book as well as some elements of your own. So before I get into it, I'm going to start placing some things just to see how I can get things positioned. Now, I did do some testing, and the testing I did with this peeled paint color of Distress Oxide. These were very white and gray, so because I'm doing some mossy things, I decided to go ahead and add some green, pops of green, just by rolling it onto the images and not doing any stamping, but just rolling it and let the dauber take off whatever it wants. So you get these areas of green that just come out of nowhere and disappear. So you can dampen your images. You can highlight them with specific colors. You can use both the peeled paint and the vintage photo. You can even use some black soot. You can use some pinks. I like how that bird's wing just came up like that. That's pretty cool. So just roll it across your images. And Marta does not mind that you are gently altering her artwork to fit your project. She encourages it. In fact, she does it herself. So she loves it when we play. She encourages play. Okay. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice, because it's going to come in to play later on, is in several of these images, you can see the spider webs. And in the corners here, spider webs. So I'm going to show you today how to add spider webs, 3-dimensional spider webs that do not come from any kind of mixed media. And I'm going to show you how you can do so, and you can do it over and over with any project. I've already done it before, and I'm going to show you how we'll do it again. So let's get going on some of this. Now, I did take some doilies and I added the peeled paint the vintage photo, and I also added an old ink pad that I had that I used with this one, as well as some black soot to get that dark green. So I've used a mixture of distressed inks on these beauties. So we're just playing right now just to see what we can get things to look like. I'm laying them down and looking to see if I want to go over or under. We've got some beautiful windows and a mirror or a window. I did this one in mainly vintage photo, but with a little tiny bit of green in it. And I found this in the yard. So what I did was I washed it, because you don't want any critters on your journal pages or bringing any critters into your house. But what I did was I used these distressed mica sprays. And I don't know if you can see it or not. As the light hits it, I used this copper color, and I also used this one that is a brushed pewter, and this one here where it's burnished brass. Now I did have some trouble with the bottles, not the material, but the bottles. So I'll discuss that later when I go over that. So this is a way that you can spray your distressed inks, your micas, I even have the spritzes. I have not done anything with the spritzes. These are all new. So I have some purples in the spritzes. I don't have a lot. I just have my favorite colors that I like to work with. One day I may have a full array of colors, but right now it's just my favorites that I know I will definitely use. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a chance and get these doilies down in the pattern I think I want to do. And then see where everything goes from there. So let's get that down. Now this was a fun project. I did it ahead of time on purpose because I don't want you guys waiting for all this to dry. I could get a dryer, I could get a heat gun, but I do a lot of this to play to see how it's going to react, because these were originally white. So you use your distressed inks on your doilies to change the colors to match the papers that you're using. And then that way you don't always have to use the white. So this is what happens when you use distressed inks on these doilies. It works out really well. They take to the inks very quickly and they dry quickly. I wanted several colors just to bump up the texture, the color components, and to bring out some of those colors that are in the papers to make them pop. You could add blues, purples. You can make these really beautiful. As you can see, this is 3 colors. It's your vintage photo, the dark green, which is akin to this peel paint. It's an older version. It's a 20-year-old stamping pad. So I knew working with the moss stories, I would want a somewhat mossy green. Now, I did create, and I'll go ahead and show you. Let me get this one down, and I'll go ahead and show you some backgrounds. I played with it. It took me 3 to 4 hours to do each one. That's why I didn't do it on camera, because I wanted to play. I wanted to use different things, let it dry, come back, see how it reacted to this. So I didn't use just one media for it. If you want to, you can use the distressed inks to go outside the doily to give it almost a shadow effect, but you have to hold on to the dauber. Now what's fascinating is these doilies, if you stamp them down on the paper, it does give you the doily design. So you can use it almost as a paper stencil. I'm just going very light. I'm not going down and up. I'm just rubbing it and turning it as I rub it. And this gives me a very light effect. Just whispering it on there. Okay, now that is down. I'm gonna get a little bit of glue on this that's popping up. And a little bit of glue on this one, popping up. Now let me show you the backgrounds I created. I did not feel like I wanted to use these backgrounds for this project. So this is one background, and you can see the shimmer of the mica sprays. And that's the burnished brass. This is also distressed inks going straight down with the dauber in the background, twisting the dauber in the background, and just slamming down the dauber to get these different circles. I've got vintage photo, peeled paint, and then on some of these that are the lighter pink is a color that I believe, let me see what the name of that color is. I have it here. Where did I put it? Oh, I've got it right here. Victorian velvet. So some of these are the pink Victorian velvet. And then this background I did with distressed ink, acrylic, and I did it a lot of lines down. And then I was testing, I believe it was this one here, the distress spritz here and here. And if you look at the light, it's a very pearlescent purple. And I don't know if that is picking up on camera. There it is. It has a very pearlescent color to it. So I was playing with those new distress spritzers. And I've learned what not to do and what to do. And so those are two backgrounds that I've worked on. It took me about 3 or 4 hours each, just because I let each layer dry. So I will use those in another time that you guys will get to see me use. Okay. So let's get back to this. I'm gonna move these out of the way. I don't know why I was straightening them up, because I don't need to use them. Okay, let's begin. And again, we've got these wonderful spider webs. I'll show you what we're gonna do later. This one is going to be extra. I'll use it for another journal or another collage. Okay, I'm going to get this one in the corner because I do like that for sure. I've got some other elements I'll be adding, so these are not the only elements. I'm trying to be careful in case this distressed ink is still a little bit wet. I'm gonna get this one down next because I know exactly where I want it to be. I hope everyone is having a good weekend so far and that you had a good week. I was glad to have the weekend because it's a proper weekend, just because sometimes I do work on Saturdays. Just part of a day. It depends on the rotation. I'm taking a chance here by doing this design that the rest of my elements are not going to work. So we will see how I get it worked out. So we've got some beautiful fairies that we're going to be incorporating, but I'm limited because the way they were created as edge pieces. So I have to use them as an edge piece or it will look odd. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one down. Sometimes I want to jump ahead of myself. I want to put the decorations on before I ice the cake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this point up with this line of these papers here. That way I get it to balance. You always want to be thinking about balance whenever you put an element down. I'm going to bring this down to the edge because I don't like what it was doing when it was above the edge. So I get that point right there on that line, and then I'm going to trim. Now I want to put her here because she fits really well, but this cloud, this mossy cloud, is a little bit wonky. So I'm going to trim it up to soften it. And you see that hard edge? So what I'm going to do is make it look like it's more cloud-like and cut that sharp edge off. And you see how that softens and makes it look like it belongs to the background. So it makes it a little bit more believable that the two were always there together. So you can soften any edges that look a little bit too sharp. And I see something I'm not liking. Her head is too close to that bird. So I'm going to move her back a bit and up so that that is not the case. Now, the space between her and the bird is a lot more pleasant. He's not like right there at her face. She's also an edge piece, so I am limited to where I can put her. So let's see how she looks there. Now what I may do, there's a lot of green. There's going to be more green. I want to bring in more of these vintage photo colors. So I'm going to change out my dauber and get my vintage photo dauber. I usually like to keep one dauber for each color. That way I get a pure stamping and not a mixture of colors. So what I want to do with this right here, you see how there's a lot of white. It would stand out too much, too glaring, too bright. So I'm going to gently, and I say gently as I just drag it across. I'm going to add just a little bit, a tinge of that vintage photo. Kind of vintage it out. Make it not so bright. Add a little bit of interest. Just gently rub it on there. I got a little too heavy-handed right there, but that's all right. Just light whispers. And then that blends a lot more with the rest of your pieces. And don't think that you're gonna insult Marta by doing that, because she's already said, if you wanna cut off wings, cut off wings. If you wanna do, you know, acrylics on top, do acrylics on top. I may not use this for this piece, and I may still use this for this piece. So we will see. We're just playing right now. Seeing the things that I've already selected, what I want to work out. She's got an edge to the window that makes me want to think I want to put her on an edge. But I have to balance it out. Sometimes I end up with more pieces than I want to use, and that's quite all right. Cut out as many pieces as you think you might use, because that does save you time in the long run. I may not use this butterfly. For some reason, I'm not wanting to shove that butterfly in there. But then again, I may want to. Let me sit with it for just a moment while I think about it. And get a sip of water. Okay. Now this leaf too may be too much for this piece. I'm leaving it for last on purpose because if it does end up being too much, I can use it in another project. I don't mind. Okay. I like her here between these two pieces. I like that look, so I'm gonna go ahead and place her there. And we've got some thunderstorms kicking up. I don't know if you can hear the rumble of the thunder, but at least I can get some background noise. Now what I want to do is I want to balance these girls and these windows, otherwise it's going to look really odd. So I want a straight angle. These two have an angle, so I definitely don't want to put her on the same level as this one right here. I could put her up here, which would work beautifully, because then I have the triangle. And they call it the magic triangle. For some reason, your eye looks for those types of balances. Okay, I'm gonna put this window down. And then we're gonna get to really playing. You thought we were playing now? Just wait. Let me get her down where I want her. I'm going to go ahead and place her instead of here. And I'm not sure if you can see that. Instead of here. Watch what happens when I pull her in. It closes that white gap. That white gap that is glaring. It doesn't look quite right. So by pulling her in and lining her up with that weathered wood, it gives it more of a beautiful appearance rather than something that just looks odd. It really joins the images together very well. It looks like they're a part of each other. I've got this little guy. I'm gonna put him in the corner. He did not have legs. So no, I didn't cut off his legs. He was created without legs. but he's got some trees and forest painted on him. So he's really beautiful. So you see his little forest that Marta put on him. Now what I'm doing is I'm doing a whisper of this dauber with some vintage photo to take away that white gap. I could run it along here, and again, I gotta hold on to it. I could vintage this part out. I could vintage that, a little bit of that, vintage on the window, vintage up here, vintage in that area. So I'm just lightly taking this dauber. Now I may end up covering this up, but that's okay. It takes away any bright white that makes it a little bit too bright. Okay, now, let's see, do I want this mushroom? Covers up these beautiful mushrooms. Oh, I kind of like that effect. You still see the beauty of the window. That's where we're gonna put him. So move your pieces around. Don't stress that you're not making a decision immediately. By putting things in front of other images, you add to a dimensional layer, pushing it into the background. Okay. I can still see the beauty of these mushrooms here. I'm still not quite sure. Now, I do have some moss that I got at the craft store. There's an area where you can look at all the model train areas. And when I say areas, I mean the craft area where they have the models, the trains, they have the fake trees, the fake moss, the fake rocks, the fake roads and railroad tracks, things like that. This is where I got that, and it's a very, very soft, cushy moss that I love to work with. I've also got some Spanish moss that hangs that I've got coming, but I won't use it for this project. So I'm going to see if there's a few pieces of this that I can add. I love adding three-dimensional things to my collages, but only if it works, only if it adds to the beauty of a project. So I'm going to add some glue right here and place that down and let it tack. Move this guy out of the way. So it will tack itself to the glue, but the top will still be fluffy. and three-dimensional. And if I don't like a part of it, I can just snip it. If it's looking gangly or off kilter. Okay, let's see if there's anywhere else I would like to add some moss to our moss stories. I'm gonna add some glue here and then just play with it and see if I can't get it to behave. So you'll want to use, you can probably use your glue strip, your little strips that you put on the back of paper. This will stick to that, or you can use like I'm doing with the liquid glues. The liquid glues may be stronger. And then I'm going to trim these areas that look like they're in the way of her face. So this moss is a whole lot fun to work with. So go to your area where they sell all things model train and everything that goes with it. And you will find this soft moss. You may even be able to get it on Amazon, but on Amazon you can't actually feel it. If you go into a craft store and ask for the soft moss, the greens, they have varying colors of greens in their mosses. The Spanish moss is more of a brown tan, sagey color. So by getting different colors, you actually can create a beautiful imagery. Okay, so I'm going to get this leaf right there in the middle. And I'm gonna go ahead and glue it down. But I'm gonna glue along the spine so the rest of the leaves can still pop up. It gives it more of a three-dimensional quality to it. So I want to make sure I'm not covering her and I'm not covering her. And then I'm not covering too many of those mushrooms. Maybe pull it down just a slight tad to showcase those mushrooms a little bit more. Okay. So that's that. So I love gathering three-dimensional things. In fact, I'll show you my stash. I've got some red onion skin. You can use yellow onion skin. You just peel it off and let it dry. I've got a dove feather that I found on the ground that I will probably use in a collage. I've got some eucalyptus leaves, some more red onion skin. I've got a strawberry leaf that was in a pack of strawberries that I just let dry on its own. Let's see if I've got anything else. That's pretty much it for my stash right now, except for this little leaf and my moss. So I do have some three-dimensional elements that I'm looking to see how I want to use them in the future. Okay, so I've got two mossies. But you know what? 3 is the magic number of balance. So we're gonna do one more. So I've got here, so I wanna do maybe moss right down here. Let's see. I don't want a huge piece. That's perfect. That doesn't look too obtrusive. So let's do that, and then we're gonna get into the super fun. I'm gonna show you something I discovered last year. I'm gonna show you how I used it, and I'm going to show you how to do it again. Tweezers are really good to position this, to get it tacked down. And I see a little leaf that's a little bit wonky that I'm just gonna trim off. I like that this little branch is popping up. I'm gonna leave him and let that tack down. Okay, let's get to business. Let me get another drink. Now you remember in the beginning, in some of these images, I showed you the spider webs. Now, I came up with this idea last year. I paid $1.25 from this pack, and you can see how much I have left. You don't need much, not much at all. Let me show you the project I did with it last year. It was called The Spider Princess. And you see the spider webs? I was able to stretch them over and across down to here, over here, and we're gonna do that today on this one here, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So this is the season that you can actually get for not much money, the spider webs. So you just need a little piece. So we're gonna pull off a little piece. You may want to cut it, because again, you don't need much. So we're gonna work with just that much. That may be too much. So think about things that you decorate with that you can incorporate into your journals. Now bear with me, because I'm going to need to work this spider webby stuff to an area where I can stretch it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dab of glue where I want it to start, and it's going to start right here in the corner. And I'm going to have to leave it there to tack. And I'm gonna need to weigh it down, so I'm gonna weigh it down with my trusty friend. Now that it is tacking and you are weighing it down, you can then pull it in any direction you want it to go. You can have it go up over the page, drape it around the corner. You can pull it down. So we can pull it over the moss. We're stretching it to the areas we want it to be. You don't want it to be too thick, because you don't want it to cover your images. So I'm gonna bring this one down here. I'm gonna tack it, because this is the exact spot. And then I'm going to use something else to weigh it down, because this glue does need a couple of minutes to tack. This one is draped up here over the edge, so it's okay for right now. We'll glue it a little bit later. Let's see what we want to do with this. You can cut it and not put any more webs on it. If you want to keep the webs up here, I have not yet decided. I'm gonna tack it right here. And I'm gonna get something else to weigh it down. Then I'm gonna take this down here. And I'm going to tack it here. So play with it, see where you want it to tack. The reason why I'm weighing it down is so I can stretch it. Now, I do not want to go any further with that, so I'm going to cut it off because I don't want spider webs over the entire collage. But this is a fun thing you can do, especially during Halloween when you're doing your spooky pages. Play with the spider webs. And these little pieces I'm cutting off, I don't need to keep. That's okay. That's tacking down. That's tacked down. That's tacked down. And that is tacked down. So, I'm going to manipulate this a little bit. Bring it up over that moss so it doesn't cover it entirely, but leave enough of a wispy curtain so that you can tell that there's a spider web there. So this spider's been busy. And here's the spider right here. Okay, so let's see. So that was my fun project for today, other than the other moss and the leaf with the distressed oxide. Okay, so these webs will dry very good. You can even use your strip glues with your little glue, the little clacky, I don't know what those are called, glue dispensers. I like using these gel pens. These gel pens are by Sakura. You can get them in any craft store. And I've got spider webs glued to my fingers. And they allow you to add gel drawing, gel dots, anywhere you want to put them. So you can do the splatters, or I like this because it's more controlled. It's actually adding it exactly where I want it. And I just did this over spider webs. So you can see that it will go anywhere. She's actually behind the spider web, which actually is pretty cute. I like the fact that she's behind the spider web. Okay, so there's the white. Now my favorite one is the copper. I love this copper colored one. And again, these gel pens will go right over anything you want to put them on. You see it goes over the doilies. This is a way to really punch up your collages in a very controlled manner. It makes it more ethereal, magical. Can add interest to an area that's dull or dark. You see how that pops out that darkness? You can even do it on her dress, in her hair. On her dress or wings. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, there she is. The fairy webs. I so appreciate your time here with me today. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And I don't know, can you see the spider webs? They're right there in the corner, stretching across. Coming down. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me here and giving me your time. I hope you have enjoyed it, because I certainly have. And I will see you on the next one.